Hey, this is the World Advice Channel. What I want to talk about today is something related to my What If series, which is a series where we answer questions that people are curious about, to give a conclusive answer to what would happen if certain situations were to happen. And for this video, what I'm going to talk about is what would happen if there were to be a civil war in the United States of America, which people have been talking about for years now. America's heading towards civil war, blah, 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 blah. You've heard it over and over and over again. And for this video, we will answer what would happen if America were to actually have a civil war. So let's get started. So when it comes to the question of what would happen if America were to actually have a civil war, just to fulfill people's interest and curiosity, especially with the fact that obviously it would be based on left wing versus the right wing. The first thing I would bring up is obviously the question of who would win. Now, when it comes to the question of who would win, to put it bluntly, most likely I believe the liberals would win, the left wing would win, but probably, if anything, barely would win. Because the reason why I believe the left wing would win is because the left wing obviously have most of Americans live in the northern states of America. Most of the good quality and the best quality materials available are in in the northern states, like the best quality military equipment and so on and so forth are in the north, and not to mention that would obviously represent the government versus obviously people who are rebelling against a situation that they're not happy about. So the truth of the matter is America would definitely the left wing would definitely win, but barely, if anything, because of different ideologies and belief systems, they would be heavily weakened as a result of that. And the truth of the matter is you also have to take something else into account. The fact that obviously the left wing, of course, is more interconnected with the rest of the world because I represent the mainstream government, while if states like Texas, Alabama, Mississippi, and so on and so forth were to form a coalition, that wouldn't be considered the actually United States, to put it bluntly. Okay, that wouldn't be considered officially United States. That would be considered people seceding. So the truth of the matter is, America, America would still be defined more on the regions that did not break away from it, which would consist of the North and the South and the Southwestern United States, the Northwest, Alaska, places like that would be considered America. So obviously when you have things like that, the North and more like United States of America for that matter would defeat the South. So that's the truth of the matter. So that's the first thing to mention. The left would win, but barely. Now the second thing to bring up, what would happen if America would have a civil war? That goes along with my second point, is obviously what the impact would be. So what would the impact be? Because I said they would barely win. Now the impact when it comes to how it would affect actually the American citizens on a ground-to-ground basis is simply down to the fact how it would affect them is, truth be told, it would be completely devastating and would result in, at the very least, if it's full scale and it doesn't end in a short period of time, millions of deaths. Okay, because the truth of the matter is the American people in general are not a people used to strife. Okay, they're not used to strife like other nations of people. They're not adaptable, and a lot of them, to put it bluntly, are not used to even walking. Whenever crises happen in other nations, when you have refugees, people can walk from one place to another over the span of a day or even a few days. Americans do not, I don't believe, really have that ability to do that. Or at least if they could, it would not be on the scale and efficiency of other nations when they have humanitarian crises. Not to mention, how do you deal with a generation of people, not just a generation, but a nation of people who are used to always being pampered, always having good quality food, always having access to TV and entertainment. Now they have nothing to do but to stay in places. We already saw when Katrina happened, and now that compared to Civil War, that's nothing. When Hurricane Katrina happened, we already saw how freaking crazy shit got. And a lot of it is also due to the fact that Americans are not used to that. So now try to have a full-blown war, of course, for the people affected, how do you get used to stuff like that, in all honesty? How do you get used to having things and situations like that, for that matter? How do you get used to that? How do you get used to having people, who once lived good lives now being caught up in caught up with a situation that is not only out of their control, they're not used to strife. People would die en masse, and there'd be massive anguish and anxiety and stress, not to mention most Americans, or at least a good portion, are on some form of antidepressants and medicines. So now you don't have access to that because now there's a crisis. What are they going to do? And that's the truth of the matter. It would truly be devastating for America. Millions would die. It would be truly a devastating event. So that's the second point. It would truly be something that would truly be something, a crisis that we've never seen before. So that's the second point. The third and the last point, for people's curiosity, is what would happen in America on a world scale. And obviously, due to the fact that America is a developed country, and the fact that they have very highly trained troops on both sides, would clearly be in a very effective, efficient, dramatic, vicious war. So the truth of the matter is, if there were to truly be something that terrible in America, the truth of the matter is the South, the South and the North, both sides, of course, that made up what was once fully the United States, would be devastated. And the truth of the matter is, once America regains their territory, they lose their status as a world power. Because not only would obviously they lose everything, like from the fact that obviously, their economy would of course be affected dramatically by it, and the fact that due to the fact that everyone's so focused on the war, they wouldn't have the soft power effect, in other words, entertainment, to kind of keep people entertained. Because history shows, and just down to common sense, when wars and situations like that happen, people don't want to hear happy sounding music. People don't want to hear things about trivial things about relationships and stuff. They want to hear something different. And that's the truth of the matter, though. Okay? Americans clearly wouldn't want to hear that stuff. And the world would, of course, not expect them to talk about that. So people wouldn't want to listen to that. So the truth of the matter is, China would probably overcome the United States, even though China is, not really doing the greatest, and they're kind of just okay. Obviously, when you have a situation like that, America's kind of done. So what do you expect is going to happen? It's just kind of like, as the saying goes, what happens, even if a nation is a chump compared to another nation, if that nation is pretty much collapsing, then you're going to have someone else replace it, even if that other nation that was prior to it was more advanced and more knowledgeable and more sophisticated than another nation that surpassed them. It even referred to that in the Bible, and that's the truth of the matter. There's even a quote that goes along that line. So it's no different here. China would overcome the United States because obviously China would be unified. They'd have a lot of money. They have a developing economy that's developing and growing, and compared to United States, yeah, they would be doing better. So China would officially become a world power, and it would truly be between China and India, and America would just simply fade into, at least for a period of time, obscurity, because they would have truly collapsed and truly become a former shell of their once former glory. So that's the truth of what would happen to America if they had a civil war. It would truly be devastating for the world, and America would truly not be the superpower it is today. And that's my video. If you are curious, you know. And if you like this video and like videos like this, remember to thumbs this video up and hit the subscribe button. And that's all I have to say. And simply put it, later.